that, industrial light, and magic. For the last 37 years, ILM has made some of the most well-known effects in Hollywood history. Have you seen the Star Wars movies, the Indiana Jones trilogy, or the Transformers films? You know the work of ILM. Jeff White was the visual effects supervisor on the Avengers and Transformers Dark of the Moon. I sat down with him to talk about what first inspired him to get into special effects and a problem ILM had about a particularly colorful Hulk.
I think so many of us saw Star Wars and said, okay, this is where we want to work. And, knowing that ILM kind of was founded to create that, and then just following it over the years and then getting a chance to get a job here was really a dream come true.
Let's talk about the most recent film you did, The Avengers. We're actually sitting here in the motion capture stage where you said you'd shot a lot of stuff for that movie. What's the process? What happens in these four walls?
One of the great things about Avengers, especially with the Hulk, was having Mark Ruffalo come up here and do a performance, and we actually did several rounds of that. He came here initially just to come here on the mocap stage, and we showed him his motion kind of retargeted onto a Hulk very fast and loose so they could play with some ideas. And at the same time, we captured a range of expressions from him that we used to drive the digital version of him. And our process on this one, rather than just kind of jumping straight to the Hulk, was to actually build the digital Mark Ruffalo first and verify that when we took the data that we captured from all his expressions, put it on the digital version of him, and then looked at them side by side, that they would look the same. So that we were really figuring out the difficult problems by having a perfect reference. And then because the Hulk had elements of Mark incorporated into his design, which I think was a really great decision for this film, we were able to take a lot of that same work and kind of apply it to the Hulk.
Sometimes I feel like you may see CG characters and they will kind of like pop out from the environment, they won't kind of blend in, and he is seamless throughout that entire movie. What steps did you take to kind of make him blend in like that? Because it seemed a step above the stuff I'd seen recently. Because
the design was based on him, he did a performance for every shot. He actually came up here and put on the helmet cam and put on the ridiculous looking tracking suit and went through the entire process, and Josh could direct him and very quickly work through what the shot was, make some selects off that. Then we'd track all of that data, apply it first to our Mark Ruffalo digital double, again make sure that we had that as a good match, and then apply it through a retargeting process to the Hulk. Because the Hulk is such different proportions from Mark Ruffalo, there's a lot of work in terms of taking his performance and then the animators really crafting it into what you see on the screen, and a lot of hand-done work in terms of putting that together. What I think then helped us really blend it into the plate was when we were on set, Mark was there for every Hulk shot. And so we were able to render the Hulk and stack him up side by side with the Mark Ruffalo there. And it was something that we kind of learned on Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean is you have the real actor there, even if you're not using any part of them, just to have the reference of what do Mark's eyes look like in this shot, in this lighting, in this environment, and then making sure that our Hulk matches that. Because a lot of times we'd put our digital character in there, we'd render it, and like, hey, this looks great, and then we'd start comparing it, like, whoa, there's a lot that's off that we need to go fix. Even down to just the angle of the eyelashes could make a big difference in terms of your perception of the character and that kind of match. So, I think especially for the things where CG tends to be a big struggle, like around the eyes, where you're trying to put some thought and some emotion into the eyes, being able to have that reference performance was really valuable.
What are some other areas that are traditionally a struggle when you're trying to go and put a character together like that?
Well, I think for the Hulk, he's a human, and yet he's not only giant-sized, but he's got green skin. And we sort of joked around all the time that green is a really difficult color. Humans are very sensitive to green and differences in that color. And he's in so many different environments. He's down on the Park Avenue Viaduct, and he's jumping up, Stark Tower to the, outside. And the blue sky or the building shadows would all change his green color to sort of bad looking colors. We had Minty Hulk and we had Pumpkin Hulk, and so we worked very closely with Marvel in terms of trying to make sure that his color was consistent throughout, and that we also early on in the process, Joss decided that the green really wanted to be a pretty desaturated green. And I think that helped us a lot in terms of making him look real, because it's very similar in saturation to kind of a natural flesh tone. So, rather than something that kind of pops off the screen, he integrates really nicely with the other Avengers that are there.
Well, so Joss Whedon, directing the Avengers, not somebody that had done a huge big budget film like that before. What was that experience like?
I was really excited to get a chance to work with him on this project, and had been such a huge fan of his coming into it. And it was really fantastic. I think all the humor and that you see in the writing and that you see on the screen is what it's like working with him every day. He's pretty amazing at pulling out references to movies and artists that we'd be scrambling to go look up to see what he's talking about. But it was a really phenomenal experience, and I think the great thing that he brought to it was making sure that in the end the visual effects always serve the story that he was creating. I think people really connect with these characters, and then our job was to just make sure everything looked good. One of the really fun parts about working with him is that because he's such a fan of comic books to begin with, he knew what people wanted to see the Hulk do, and so he gave us those moments.
Another effects supervisor influenced by Star Wars was Grady Cofer. We talked to Grady about his work on the film Battleship and Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood.
So we got a call that there were a few shots on There Will Be Blood that kind of sat in the middle of his movie, and that was kind of the big whenever they strike oil in the middle of it, and there's the big kind of the big geyser of oil, and there were lots of ways to kind of tackle that kind of shot. Now for Paul, who's definitely a purist and really honors kind of the craft of filmmaking and likes the purity of the frame and all of that, because I could have done, this was a little early, I could have done like a big CG simulation and done all of that, and for that show that didn't really seem like kind of the right solution. We kind of, it was something, actually a special effects foreman, it was great, had a pretty good looking kind of representation of oil, and we did a big kind of, we shot it as kind of a miniature. We actually sprayed oil up in the air down in LA and filmed all of these elements, and it became kind of a large kind of comp of those kind of elements. And it worked really well, and it was all very real. It meant a lot of the cameramen kind of got covered with this kind of fake oil, but it worked out in the end.
You were the supervisor on Battleship. You guys have a long history of great sci-fi movie special effects. When you're taking something on like that, was it daunting? And what is the process and some particular innovations you guys brought to the table with Battleship?
It was daunting, for sure. And a lot of that were, there was a lot of big ideas in this, and that's kind of what you want. When you find a director who, and Pete is definitely an idea guy. It's like it's kind of nonstop. He'll show up in the morning and go, "I've got it." Get my previs guys out here, and he'll throw out all these interesting things, and you go down all these different kind of creative journeys and like ideas and stuff. But when he pitched it, it wasn't just kind of naval warfare. It was naval warfare meets sci-fi alien invasion, on a grand scale, on a summer blockbuster scale. And he wanted spectacle. It's like he wasn't shying away from it. He's like, I'm here. I'm making a big, mega summer movie. And the way he described it was that this alien invasion, they land in these ships called Stingers, which are, if you look at kind of their silhouette, they're kind of based on like these water bugs, right? So they can kind of hover or kind of walk along the surface or float along the surface of the ocean. But he wanted them to start kind of submerged. So in their reveal, and this is kind of a big part of the movie, they all kind of breach up through the water and then they splash back down. That's already pretty hard, right? We know that that's a kind of a large-scale fluid simulation, and that was going to be something we were going to wrap our heads around. But as the project we were in pre-production, he said, okay, not only do they breach and they sit on the surface of the water, but I want them, I want all of these tubes and stuff underneath them, and they kind of suck water up out of them and then recycle it over them constantly. Like they're just constant waterfalls, And of course you nod. You're like, okay, that sounds great, very interesting. And we kind of knew at that point that, and ILM has actually a great, history of water shows specifically. They've done some really, really groundbreaking stuff. But maintaining that over the course of this entire show, for a lot of it in broad daylight and in very, very wide kind of spectacle shots, we knew we were going to have to raise our game. And it was, it was pretty amazing here at ILM because they have a really, really strong R&D department. And so you get all these guys together in a room, and they came up with, they call it the Battleship Water Project. And pretty much over the course of almost a year, they re-engineered how we tackle kind of large-scale fluid simulations at ILM, and then how we render it, render it for all. We wanted to kind of represent water kind of through the entire kind of lifespan of water, from a big kind of splashy mass of water to the little spitty kind of particulate that comes off of that, to the little mist that comes off of that, and all of it we wanted to be influenced by airfields and simulated kind of movement of vortices in the air. It was a huge, huge project. But at the end of the day, it really enhanced kind of your experience of these stingers. It became a part of their personality. Pete's mandate from the beginning on this film was authenticity, right? Everything had to be very authentic. And we were scouting the Missouri one day down in Pearl Harbor, and there was I kind of caught wind throughout the day that Pete wanted to have a bit of an effects meeting dockside at the end of the day. So I met him, and so we're kind of sitting there, and there's this wall to wall, there's the Missouri, kind of beautiful and majestic, kind of filling the horizon. And he said, all right, that I get. That's real. I feel that ship. Your work has to look just as good as that. I have to believe your work. And it was a challenge,
Right, that's no pressure. That's no pressure at all.
Yeah. But it was great. And it actually, it set kind of a high, lofty goal for us. And that's kind of what you want, You want to aim high.
Well, Grady, thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's been a real treat just to get an insight into what you do every day in the facility. Thanks so much. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Thanks.